Hey everybody, welcome to our third anniversary Q&A episode. It's been a long time coming. We were originally, I think, meant to do this back in May, I think was the original plan, that being the actual third anniversary. But you know how things have been, so all things have been up in the air here.
To say the least.
Yeah. As you can all hear, I'm joined today by Eden.
Hello.
And we've got a whole list of questions submitted from Twitter and Discord. But yeah, how are you doing, man?
All good over here. I'm ready and raring to go with the questions and what have you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you got a preference? Should we alternate between Twitter and Discord on this? Because I've got a sort of fairly even split. Or do you think we should do like
just chuck them at me?
Let's just
see. Let's go through them one by one. I don't think there's any point in figuring out some order or anything like that.
Yeah.
People will be interested in the answers, hopefully.
Sure.
More than anything else, and hearing their names read out.
Well, a good place to start then, I think, is on Discord. Our first question we were given was by Cool Kid. It says, "How did you start the podcast?" I think we've kind of talked about this before, but it's always good to kind of go back into it. Well, both of us had separately done podcasts for years prior to this one, hadn't we?
Yeah, I think I might have been the first person I knew that did one at one point. Years back, doing one called The Mighty Beards.
That's the one I wrote the opening theme for that one, right? I think I did.
You did, yes. Yeah, it was much appreciated.
That's somewhere on my hard drive somewhere.
Back. That was God. It's funny to think I haven't actually considered how many years we've been recording and doing different things for at this point. But it is, because you and I have been both doing separate stuff. You'd been doing Subdued. I'd been doing Pop Culture with Mark, who's been on the D&D podcast stuff that we've done for Pretending with Dice before.
And he was also in the Star Wars story.
Indeed. And I can't even remember how it started up. I think it was kind of, were we talking at some point and it was sort of thrown up in the air? Obviously, you were the instigator on this because it was your baby, as it were.
On my side of things, I did podcast with my buddy Nathan for 5 years called Subdued. And then Nathan was moving away and recording it online. At that point, either the sort of technology wasn't really there for both of us, or it just kind of would have affected the vibe. So we just kind of called it a day when he was moving away. And I was sort of looking for the next thing to do. And I was sort of we were playing D&D anyway. I had a group going, which also ironically was just kind of coming to an end. This was just like a home game. And I'd kind of been kicking around the idea, actually, even before we'd finished Subdued, of it'd be cool to play a game like this on podcast just as see how it turns out. Then that podcast ended, and I was like, "Oh well, why don't I just do this kind of thing?" At the time, I was kind of, I still am really. There's no escape. Watching a lot of Critical Role and other kind of stuff like that, and I think I kind of reached out to you and Mark and Jason and was like, "Hey, we've kind of vaguely talked about doing D&D and stuff," because I think at that point I'd been saying what weird things were going on in my D&D home game and things, and come to putting this one together, I kind of had the idea of it would be helpful to have people who've podcasted before, sort of at the very least as the first group sort of thing. I think going in, it was always a thing that we thought, okay, well, we might have some, kind of rotating groups as we go, sort of thing. But you guys all having, being fairly comfortable on mics, I think was how that kind of came together.
Yeah, because obviously none of us, I mean, we've said this before a few times, but none of us had any opportunity or experience in terms of role-playing before sitting down with you. You were the kind of games master and truly the only person in the room during that first session that had any idea what was going on and where we were going with it, because everybody else was flying by the seat of their pants, where, me and Jason are lifelong gamers, so we've got a certain amount of, we understand the mechanics of the game quite easily. All of that's quite intuitive.
Yeah.
Mark is not. And as such, there was a really interesting mix of attitudes towards what we were doing and obviously confidence on mic and all the rest of it. It was a weird melting pot, but I think it came together quite nicely. And
I think it worked. Mark's, I mean, this isn't like a dunk or anything to say that he was maybe a bit more hesitant to begin with at doing stuff. But I think that played well into his character at the start and that.
That's it. And we did, like, maybe I'm misremembering, but as far as I was concerned, there was always an intent to have a certain amount of like narrative structure, and that this was going to be us playing the game, but there was an intent to have like the podcast had to have like entertainment value to it. There had to be like a sort of point A to B of things, and that we weren't just going to sort of meander along and just be murder hobos all the time. We were going to allow you to tell a story, and that all of us kind of like, admittedly, I was the one, and pretty much always am the one that aims directly for the bushes and then goes, we're not actually going to the bushes. I just wanted to make you think we were going to the bushes for a little while.
Yeah, I think I can't remember. I think we must have discussed it beforehand. The idea of going in of like, I think this again comes from doing other podcasts of that it wasn't just going to be like a recording of a game, because there's a lot of them online that I'm sure the people, and I'm sure they some people enjoy listening to them, but me personally, I can't just sit there and like listen to just people rolling dice for an hour or so. It had to be fun to listen to. It's a sort of the attitude of like, it's a show first that we happen to be playing a game on. It's not like this is a game recording. It is a game recording, but with the eye, at least maybe in varying degrees on the different things that we recorded over the years, the amount of post-production to go in to sort of maintain the balance of like, no, this needs to be a fun listen,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I aim for the same kind of thing where I think, in terms of like, because where you mentioned dice rolling, it makes me think that like the way that we've played a lot of the time, we treat the narrative as much a part of the game as anything else, and that the dice rolls inform the narrative, and that we as the players kind of have to like, hey, what's your next narrative move? Like in response to this dice roll, as opposed to what dice roll do you want to do in response to this narrative? We've got it the other way around, as it were.
Yeah, I think,
and I like doing it this way because I'm probably much more focused on the narrative than anything else.
I think that's the best way to do it. At least, I mean, again, every show is different, sort of thing. But I think for me personally, running the game, I prefer it that way anyway, whether we're recording or not. To be like, okay, here's what's going on. What does your character do? You tell me what the character does, and then I say, okay, so make this kind of check, rather than I walk into the room, I want to make a perception check. That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's better for us as the players to be in the room, like in the actual room. Sorry, that's poor phrasing. In the game world, as it were, as opposed to in the room with the dice in front of us and thinking like that. Yeah, I'd hope that would have come through at this point. Fans would have to tell us.
I think, yeah. Let's hope. I hope it's gone through. I hope it's a start that people enjoy. I think we've gotten a little bit off the question here. But yeah, so basically,
I'm in the bushes.
Yeah. I've done with you. You're taking us off road. Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, basically, like I say, sort of certain projects I had were coming to an end, and I was sort of looking at doing this new thing, and so you guys got sort of brought in as the first group, and kind of have, by and large, mostly stuck around, which is it's good. I like the idea. There's a bit of continuity, sort of onward, and the fact that we can go back to the group with you guys and that, and hopefully we will be soon. Finally bringing you out of the time bubble. But I'd like to say it was just kind of like a thing of I listened to a lot of podcasts already before, prior to doing this. I'd obviously done one for 5 years. I watched a lot of games things, so it was kind of like a coming together of like, okay, how do I combine all my interests into one highly stressful, costly pursuit? It's not that stressful.
I think that covers the bases. Hopefully that's a good answer.
So. Hopefully, yeah. Okay, so moving on. Unless you feel like, was there anything to add on that? I
already took us into the bushes. Don't tempt me again.
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to say you kind of touched on you and Mark had run Pop Culture, and before that you'd done Mighty Beards. Was there? I feel like there was another one.
Oh God. Yeah, I feel like there was as well. It's one of these where it's sort of like, man, I've been doing this for a long time now. It's weird for me to think, because the whole. Like for me, podcasting, part of it was like, I at one point couldn't speak as clearly as this. There was absolutely no way you'd be getting a sentence like this out of my mouth 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's definitely helped me a lot in terms of like self-confidence and all the rest of it. And that it's a weird thing to consider, but I think that like when we started doing the role playing side, it was like a whole extra level on top of like, okay, so I'm a confident speaker now, but now I've got to really try and roll with the punches in terms of like I'm being amusing or I'm continuing a narrative thread or something like that. It was a nice extra level of challenge on top where I think to some extent, like I'd played out all of my talking on mic in terms of just like, I waxed lyrical about films and games and what have you for the best part of a decade, I think, really, over the course of the different podcasts. And to finally get to a point where it's like, I don't have to just try and air my own thoughts. I can just come up with things. Like, oh, it's so much more satisfying to be doing that.
I can pretend to be a wizard.
Yeah. Fire everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, a similar sort of thing. I mean, I wouldn't make any claim that I'm a particularly great speaker now, but I'm definitely improved since doing podcasting. I'm still doing all the umming and stuff. I mean, occasionally they're popping up on shuffle on the old episodes of like Subdued, and like the later ones are a bit closer to how the early Pretending with Dice ones are in terms of like my speaking ability and stuff, because there wasn't a huge gap in between them. But the really early ones, like I'm just like all over the place. I'm umming, I'm ahhing. There's awkward silences. I'm just kind of slightly dull sounding voice. I'm just sort of the same thing comes up when I look at like old YouTube videos, because I always sort of did these sort of little kind of video blog things for my music on there. You look at the old ones and I just look like I'm like dead behind the eyes, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm saying, and my voice is like a monotone kind of, I mean it still kind of is in some ways, but it was sort of
it's that kind of like, I'm just getting through this, I'm making the video because I feel like I have to do this, getting through it.
No, it's exactly that.
I dread to think, going back to some of my oldest recordings, I've never done it, and now that you've said that, part of me is like, oh, I should probably pull out the hard drive that's got all of those on them and have a listen at some point, just to either get a sense of how far I've come or have a moment and go like, oh, I've been deluding myself. What have I been doing? I've got nowhere and said nothing.
My God, I've wasted my life.
One way or the other, I'll find out.
Let's move on. Our next one is from Tosakin on our Discord. How do you create unique stories for each episode?
But more for you than me, because I've only ever made up one story that's gone on the podcast.
Well, let's start with you then, because you did the Shadowrun one. How did that sort of come to you as like a sort of, because it was fairly sort of, I don't think my brain would have gone that way.
Yeah, it was very much my idea, I think. I will put it that way. I would. It's hard to describe that process insofar as like I've only ever really done it once, so I can point to that one and say that I was already familiar with Shadowrun. So I'd picked a setting that I'm not going to say I'm intimately familiar, because I'm not, and we found out this the hard way, I'm not familiar with the tabletop game, and it is a nightmarish jumble of horrible rules and stuff. But I am very familiar with the lore because I've played all of the Shadowrun video games. So I've got a good sense of what's possible within the universe, what the senses of humor are in particular, like, because I definitely wanted humor to be part of something I was doing, and what the writers of Shadowrun already take a lot of established concepts and then put a particular style of twist on them, and I tried to emulate that to some extent. That sense of here are modern concepts that people can kind of like understand, but then with the sprinkle of magic and excess corporatism and all the things that Shadowrun has sort of put over the top of it to try and turn it into something different. It's like, I don't know, seasoning a dish, as it were. Like, I had the core components, it's a very simple dish, but then you sprinkle on all the extra bits and suddenly it's like, there you go, that's an original piece, as it were.
So you had a good foundation to build from already, and it was just, like you say, kind of add your own little spin to it, should we say.
Yeah. And a great deal of that was like I had the character concepts in mind. Almost everything in terms of like locations and what have you that we ended up going to was something that I had pre-planned. But then there were a few things in terms of characterization. With that one in particular, I didn't expect Jason's character to hit on Dasher, and I didn't expect your character to end up not trying it on, but ending up in a brothel with a rather motherly figure taking care of him. So both of those bits in particular were just like flying by the seat of the pants, like grasping ideas out of thin air and being like, oh, that would be like the whole I'm going to tell you the story of EastEnders. That bit came out of my mouth, and after I'd said it, I was like, where did that come from?
I mean that happens like a whole bunch. Like, I mean, you got. I feel like you got a bit of a look into what I have to deal with you guys.
Oh yeah.
Like, well, to jump on another similar sort of example, like I had no plans for. Well, we've talked about this before. In that last arc we did, basically half of that whole arc I didn't have any plans for. You guys just decided, like, I mentioned there was a city, but it was, I definitely fairly sure I made it clear that wasn't where you were meant to be going. I just have a map, so I was like, well, you guys are here, so off to your right there's a city. So you immediately all walk into the city. I'm like, what? Wait, no, that's not the... Oh, okay. Well, I guess we're here for 3 episodes. Like,
well, you handled it with aplomb. You rolled with the punches nicely, and I think again that's the thing. Like, maybe you'd agree. It's that feeling of like, you know, enough components of the universe to be able to be like, okay, right, I've got all these things in front of me, and there's a variety of configurations I could put them into, and it's not really my choice. I lay the table and I say here's what's possible, and then the players come along and put it together in some weird way where I'm like, oh god, I guess that was possible, and now I've got to try and figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's as much the fun as the GM. Like, I do intend to get to doing it again, and I did promise a long time ago that I was going to organise something. But
we'll get to it. It's cool.
Yeah, it is the fun of being the GM. I think is that, like, as the player, you're given those pieces. As the GM, you're choosing which pieces are on the table.
I mean, to tie this back to the question, then, I think in terms of like for each episode, I don't plan things out episode by episode, and I don't think you really did when we were doing Shadowrun, because we recorded that all in one night, didn't we? So it's, I think, I mean, I know other podcasts, like our friends at Penance included, do like one recording is one episode basically, but that's never really been how we do things here. I feel like we think, especially, I can only speak personally, but like I kind of, when we record, I'm kind of thinking, rather than like, okay, this episode this is going to happen, this episode this is going to happen, you know, and try and sort of do it that way. I'm kind of thinking like, right, we'll record the story as a whole kind of thing. And then when it comes down to break it down to each episode, it's sort of kind of a matter of finding the natural kind of split points, if that makes sense, to sort of go like, okay, this came to like a bit of a crescendo here, so that's a good kind of cliffhanger ending. I kind of got into a vibe, especially on the Call of Cthulhu, of like every episode was like, here's the cliffhanger ending kind of thing.
Yes, and that's something that, again, as a player, like where I've been involved in a few of the different games that you've ran, I've always, and it was something that's built up over time, but these days I've always got the narrative beats in mind, and that there's a pace and a flow to things, and that I'm trying not to be the one that puts my foot into the middle of what is like an ongoing situation and go, oh, and now the narrative just stops because I want to ask a question. Instead, it's like, I'll hold back. I don't need to know the answer to certain things. I'll let the moment happen because it's more interesting narrative-wise to have what's playing out happen.
Well, I do appreciate that.
but that's the difference, where I think that, like, because we've all got that in mind, like all of us, all of the guys that we played D&D with in particular, me, you, Jason, Mark, all of us know a lot about media. Like, Mark works in media, me and Jason do game reviews, you and I, all of us have watched a hell of a lot of films. Like, all of us have massive film collections. So when it comes to understanding where somebody's going, we can do it implicitly. And I think that that's something that a lot of other groups, again, like, I've listened to some of the ones that are just pure gameplay, and I can't get into them for the most part because I'm sort of like, I don't care about what's going on. And I think that we steer very, very hard into giving reasons, even if they're silly reasons sometimes, as to giving a damn about why we're doing what we're doing, as opposed to just being like, as I've alluded to already, like just murder hobos walking into a situation and going, I am the moral arbiter of this. You die, and you die, and you live because, I don't know, you've got a silly name, and we as players have decided that means you survive. Because sometimes, again, listening to people do things, I've heard a few situations like that where I'm like, oh god, this is all a bit arbitrary. You've just like, you've all made weird decisions because they're weird decisions. Like,
yeah, I mean, and I think naturally that does lead us into, like, as to considering the question, more unique stories for each episode, because we're not thinking of it as episode to episode. But that combined with the whole sort of, as you say, leaning more towards the narrative thing, I think we're naturally going to end up with more moments that feel a bit more kind of like like I always say, like I'm not running it like I'm running a game. I'm in my head running it like I'm directing a movie. So even if we're in a game that doesn't specifically have like Things on the Flood was, although we didn't really do it that way, it's meant to be like scenes. In my head, I'm doing it as scenes, kind of thing.
I think the prime example of that, and where it came together most naturally, is when Bork, Enethay, and Prance had an argument and all went off in different directions, because none of that was planned.
No.
All of that was every one of us kind of feeling out what these characters were going to do, and it all naturally coming together. Like, I was really satisfied with the fact that came together naturally the way that it did, because it was massively risky for us all to end up separating the characters and having them have this big sort of upset over what was very little, really. But ultimately it was a character growth thing. It allowed them to come together again, and like, I felt that was quite a unique little story, insofar as like the entire episode was just the gang splitting up and then coming back together again, really.
I mean, one of the whole kind of missions, I mean, it gets drilled as like a sort of axiom sort of thing, if I'm using that correctly, is like, oh no, never split the party in D&D. And it's like, well, that might be all right when you're like dungeon crawling, but like, we're making a show here, sort of thing. Yeah. And that was so much more, so much more impactful to have you guys have a giant fight. Well, not you didn't come to blows, but to get into like a giant, argument in the middle of a very public location, all storm off in different directions, and it gave us a narrative thing. Like I say, I like to think that that was a fairly, as you say, like a unique little story for an RPG podcast kind of thing.
Yeah, no combat. Yeah. No. Strictly speaking, I mean, I suppose Mike Prance could have gone into combat if I'd been foolish enough to just try and stick around and fight those guys when they found me at the end of the episode. But it's one of those things where it's like, again, narrative-wise, I'm thinking like, it would make no sense for me to do this. It would be a really stupid thing. It's better for Prance to run away and be a coward. Like that fits his character more in this circumstance. And again, like, it's another thing that I think between our characters, like, maybe Jason's the only one that could be a little bit guilty of this, is we're not trying to be cool for the most part. And even then, I think Jason's attempt at coolness, being the nights, being the mid-afternoon, all the rest of it, it's become a bit absurd at this point.
A little bit. Well, we'll see how it goes after you guys get out of the time bubble.
That's it. I see Prance and Bork as slightly comedic characters, and then Enethay's this sort of like, he's such an edgelord that he's become comedic.
Well, the way he described his character to me when you guys were originally making characters, because obviously, as we said, you guys hadn't played the game before. You sent me a sketch of like a frazzled wizard, and were like, I want to be this guy. And Jason's thing was, I want to be Batman. So I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes, sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, to bring it back to the kind of we keep getting off into the bushes, but like a sort of as you say, the ensemble thing. But I think in general kind of terms, when it comes to like I say, the question of unique stories for each episode, I think what it is I kind of, in broad strokes, before we start recording a story arc, I'll have like a few kind of, not even like, I mean, story points, to sort of set up like where we're going to go and what I do need to do to kind of get, a story going. I'll have like a general kind of idea for a story, but as we've sort of said, like there's no accounting for what players do, so I can really only paint in broad strokes at that point. And I tend to sort of have like a couple of maybe big set pieces, even if they're not kind of combat type things, but sometimes just like, I don't know, like, oh, that would be cool imagery. Like, for example, on the pirate adventure one, I just had the idea of like this flying ship swooping down out of the clouds, and I was like, okay, now I need to figure out how I'm going to get to that sort of thing. And then it all kind of shakes out in the edit, I think, really.
I mean, some of it, as you say, it does come down to like, you can have the ideas, and then you have to either shoehorn it or railroad it a little bit to get to certain things. Potentially, like with the Shadowrun one, I could point to that and say, like, we were intending to do it in one session, and there was definitely a point where I can hear it in the recordings. I don't know if other people can because they weren't there, but I can hear the moment when I put my foot down. as it were. And we start accelerating at quite a pace because it's getting very late into the evening as far as we're concerned as players, and the game simply had to end at some point. So that again fueled the storytelling at that point. That I took it as like, right, I need to, narrative wise, find a reason to accelerate things and then keep the pace high from there onwards. And that's part of the difficulty of it. But
yeah. We are now also joined by Dragon. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Sorry.
It's all right. We're only about 20 minutes in, 25 minutes.
Okay.
So
That's
it's all
not
good.
as bad as I thought.
Yeah, no, it's all cool. We're only literally on the second question anyway, so
Okay.
it's fine.
I've been whittering on and on.
Yeah. All the tangents today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Do we have anything else to add on this one? I mean, just to sort of say, like,
no, move on to the next question.
Yeah, let's move on. So we're kind of just to get you up to speed. We're just sort of making our way through the Discord ones first, and then we'll jump over to the Twitter ones.
Okay.
So we're now getting into Nikolai's questions. His first one was, what is your favorite system to run for recording? And
well, that's all for you. Cause
this is it's tough actually, because I mean, favorite system to run. I mean, because a lot of it's tied up in like settings and things. I feel like I've enjoyed running Star Trek Adventures, but we haven't had a lot of practice running it on the recording. We've done a couple of things here and there. I feel like D&D 5th edition for running for recording, I've got it down now. You know, I know what I'm doing there, so that's probably my favorite one at the moment to run for recording, just because I don't need to sit and look up rules and how we're doing checks and things like we've had to do in, you know, things from the Flood and Call of Cthulhu and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if it's my favorite system to run in general. I have a lot of trouble picking favorites. I feel like there was one that was kind of hard to run. What did we do? Yeah. I don't know.
I'm tempted to just say Shadowrun if that's the case, but we want to cover the bases in terms of how rough those rules were.
Yeah, we'll chuck that in there as the one we're not going to run again. Well, maybe simplify.
If we ever go back to Cern Abbas, it will be basically what we ended up doing, which was just doing vague dice rolls for certain things, and then the rest of it is just pure narrative.
I mean, just getting through the character creation was hard enough, and then I spent hours on that, and then Jason downloaded a prefab character and went, I'm just going to use this one. And I was like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, it served him better as well in the end, because right at the very end when he pulled out, oh yeah, my character's got, what was it, electricity-proof padding on his jacket or something, after my guy, the enemy had pulled out a taser, I was like, oh, so he does. I guess you win that fight then. That was my feeling in that moment. It was like, oh, damn, you just pulled a trump card. I didn't even pay attention to your bloody character sheet.
Yeah.
Shows how diligent I am, I suppose.
Let's turn this question around then. So what's, for either of you, what's your favourite system to play?
Ladies first, I'll let you have that answer, as I've been going on and on.
I really enjoyed doing things from the Flood. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. I thought it was an interesting system, that the way that the characters could become affected by circumstance, and then we could help each other. That was a really interesting thing of like pep talks had their purpose and what have you. Like it became more than just a narrative moment to have somebody take somebody aside and go, look, pull yourself together. Like that actually did work for the game. And yeah, and I did enjoy that one. I think in terms of ease of play for me, it's D&D as well, just because the concepts come to mind so easily. I can see exactly what's possible within that universe. But yeah, no, I don't know that there's one that I would even pick out above the rest narrative-wise, though. I enjoy them all for different reasons. It's all different flavors, really. It's the core components are quite different. Like I love the fantasy and technology of Shadowrun. I love the pure fantasy of D&D.
Okay, so, well, if there's nothing else to add on that one, let's jump on to Nikolai's second question, which is just why? Which,
I mean, because we can.
Yeah, because what else are we going to do? I think I could spin this into an actual answer. I mean, yeah, I don't like going outside. I happen to own some microphones. No, I mean, I've always, I like doing music production and things and stuff. Yeah, this is kind of an excuse to kind of jumble all my interests into one thing to do, I suppose. Yeah.
It's as good a reason as any.
Yeah. Okay, moving swiftly on then. So, why haven't you run a homebrew fantasy/D&D game where there's no magic but the Force exists? We don't really do that many homebrew systems, I want to say. I mean, we kind of tend to hack apart any systems that we do play on here, with the possible exception of D&D. That's mainly because we never give ourselves long enough to learn the system. So it's
Plus, there's always that factor of like we've usually got quite different, diverse groups where like some of us are really into gameplay mechanics, others just aren't at all. So it's very difficult to be like, hey, here's the 500-page rule book for a new setting. Go at it.
Yeah.
We're recording in a week. Have fun. I mean, that's an interesting idea. D&D, but there's no magic, but there's the Force. I mean, I suppose at that point, it might be easier to kind of backwards compatible the Star Wars setting, system that I've got, and just take out all the guns.
Could be a Star Wars planet where the technology is not there, but there are Force sensitives on that planet. So it could almost work out like it would feel like a fantasy setting, and they're all in the Star Wars universe, but they don't really know it. Yeah,
and that would be the easiest way to do it. I mean, as to why I haven't run it, because I mean, this is the first I'm hearing about it. But no, that does sound like a good idea. Maybe we could figure out like a one shot for that or something. I don't know. Maybe there's like a ship crashed or something. It didn't have any guns on board, but there was like a Jedi or two on there. And then we go a few generations down the line, and they still don't have guns. But now there's there's some Jedi descendants or something. I don't know. There's a long walk to go to for that.
Feels like the kind of thing where you'd have to end it with like, and then it becomes revealed to the characters right at the end of everything that they are part of this broader universe. Like that would have to be the conclusion, surely.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like really tying it back into stuff and giving you that impetus of like, and then who knows where these characters go after that.
Yeah. But we've just spoiled the ending.
Hey, that's just... This is the glimpse behind the curtain, right?
Here's a glimpse behind the curtain that we can no longer open.
Not everybody listens to the Q&As, and I'm one of these people that can hear a spoiler and then watch the thing because the execution's the point of it to me a lot of the time. So
yeah, fair. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll look into that as a one shot then.
And in fairness, depending on when you do it, we might have completely forgot about that anyway.
Oh, that's a high possibility, high probability on that. I forget what I did last week, let alone like
moving swiftly on.
Who would your ideal 5-person celebrity party to DM for be?
I should have thought about this.
Yeah, I probably should have thought about it ahead of time as well. And what would you play? I mean, I probably let's say D&D just because it's easier to.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
I would totally go for all the LA comedians, the geeks that are in all the shows at the moment. In The Mandalorian, just about every episode's got some LA comedian there where I'm like, okay, Brian Posehn. Yep, I'd have him at the table. He's definitely played D&D before. I think David Cross would be a good one. Who else would be a fun?
I mean, Brian Posehn hosts Nerd Poker, another D&D
exactly,
podcast.
Like,
David Cross is in one of the community D&D episodes.
Exactly. These are guys where it's sort of like they're already ingratiated enough where I feel, plus they're like good character actors, they're good comedians. So I feel like that whole thing of like pulling a narrative together on the fly would work well with a group like that.
I
think I'd throw Bill Burr into the mix, mostly because he's not in that, but I think he'd be a really fun, cranky asshole at the table in surprise. Like he'd be the instigator for a lot of action. Who else? I think Doug Stanhope. He'd be weird. I don't know.
You're building a very crotchety party here.
Yeah, basically. I'm basically going to have a table full of middle-aged men that are just going to bitterly tell jokes to each other between rounds. Or one more. I'm missing one. Let's see. Bill Bailey, just for a bit of Englishness in the mix. And he would be the weirdo of the group in terms of like, he'd be the one that would bring some levity and probably pull faces while everybody else is trying to be serious.
Yeah.
If it helps, I think I recognised one of the names. So I'm completely lost.
Yes, I'm going deep cuts American comedy right here.
Okay,
I know my stand-ups all too well.
I'll do the opposite then. So my part is going to be Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry, and let's chuck Rowan Atkinson and Tony Robinson in there. So we're basically it's just the cast of Blackadder.
Yes, yeah, that is solid.
So I need
they all just fit into their roles immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get person in another circumstance, it works. Gold.
We need a fifth. Let's put, because I've been watching a lot of QI, we'll throw Alan Davis in as well. There we go. So basically the cast of Blackadder and Alan Davis.
He'd be the Bork of that group, 100%.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So you got me thinking. I was like, I did League of Gentlemen, all of the League of Gentlemen. That would make a really interesting table. You probably play a game of Call of Cthulhu with them. Then that would work out quite nicely, I think.
Okay, that's the last of Nikolai's questions. Steve Boost.
Steve Boost. Sorry, got to do it.
Yeah. He says, what's a TV show or movie universe you'd like to have a homebrew story set in? Star Wars excluded, as you've already been there. Well, we were talking about Mass Effect while we were throwing around one-shot ideas. I feel like I would enjoy giving that a shot.
Yes, yeah, no, and again, I'm knowledgeable enough about Mass Effect, and I love the expanded universe for that. Like, there's a lot of facets that the games didn't explore that I think are really interesting angles.
Well, it was a joke, but I do want to do it, that we were going to do an all-Krogan party and have everybody have to talk like this for the whole hour kind of thing. Just destroy all our voices.
Horribly raspy voices for the next week afterwards.
I feel like that would still be funny, but like yeah, maybe do that when we've already got a whole bunch of stuff recorded to release. So just let throats just regenerate a bit. Yeah.
We'll see if I end up on the phones again for my next job, because that'll be the limiter for that one.
Yeah. I'd say Mass Effect I would enjoy. Again, another, as is in the spirit of peeking behind the curtain sort of thing, we were talking about doing a Harry Potter one-shot, and then 2 days later J.K. Rowling came out and said a bunch of transphobic stuff, so that one got put on the back burner. Yeah, so that's forget that one. I don't know, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of ones because a lot of the game systems we've got are kind of very rooted in like the setting as it is kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Steve said Star Wars excluded, but we've also done Star Trek. I feel like there was one other one. I mean, we've got Alien that we were planning on doing this year, and that's, as with everything, kind of been sort of knocked on a little bit. I think, that'd be fun to do that one. I'm struggling again. I'm kind of thinking through TV and movie universes in my head, the ones that would like fit, because obviously, I mean, you can't do like a Friends RPG. Like, it'd have to have I mean, just to sort of
see if you're on a break.
I'm just thinking it would have ideally to have some sort of sci-fi or fantasy type thing to it to kind of fit in thematically with certain stuff that we've done, or horror.
Yeah, I'm racking my brain because it's easy for me. Like, my mind goes to things like Futurama or something like that, but then I don't know how you would make it so distinctly Futurama-esque without just directly referencing concepts from episodes of the show.
Yeah, it would just be like a futuristic thing, and you just be like, oh, and Morbo's on the TV, kind of thing.
Yeah, the central bureaucracy, like that kind of thing. You'd just be referencing those things, but whereas you can do the same ideas, but a lot of D&D is that way. We've talked about it already, like that thing of coming up with the ideas. You're kind of taking components from other things, putting it all together in a new way, and finding something new as a result. Whereas, I guess the jokes have been made with something like Futurama.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the whole thing of it, really, isn't it? It's like it's a futuristic setting, but the show is the characters and the jokes, sort of thing.
I'm trying to think, like, it's a stupid idea, but like an Always Sunny RPG where you're the gang, and at the start of each session, somebody has, like, whatever the stupidest thing that somebody says is, that's what the objective is. You need to get to whatever it is that was said, and all the roles would be just how evil and terrible are you going to be throughout the whole process. Like there's no winning a game of Always Sunny. It's just how awful were your characters during the process.
So the silly, the awful, stupid thing that's said. Yeah, that's the title card, is it?
Yeah.
So as soon as somebody says something,
the episode start, it's like the gang's going to such and such or whatever. And it's always because somebody utters something right at the start of the episode. It's like, we're going to do this, and then the title card pops, and it's like, oh right, let's watch the idiots.
The gang don't do this. Sort of thing. Yeah. That's actually...
Yeah, I could see that you could come up with a system where maybe that would be possible, and it would just be the objective of like, just how awful can you be? What are the most socially corrupt things that your characters could do?
I feel like we could play that using that the end of the world system, where we just come up with some stats for the gang from Always Sunny, because that's basically the playing as yourself one. So it's the closest you're going to get to like, here's the stats of a regular person. Sort of
that's
thing.
It. God, yeah, no, but I quite like this. I'm thinking now, it's like somebody must have already had this idea, but if they've not, then how do I? What would I figure out? What would the Golden God stats be?
Maybe like a Red Dwarf RPG, but then again, it's a similar thing of like the people are going to have to basically like, okay, pick which one of the 4 main characters you're going to be, sort of thing, rather than like setting it in a universe, because the shows are so focused on like character based. You know, as opposed to something like, I mean, I'm not saying Star Wars and that isn't character based, but it's got a little bit of a kind of focus more on like, not focus, but I mean,
there's the whole universe.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's a bit of a broader focus, broader. Whereas something like you say, Always Sunny or Red Dwarf is very much like, okay, they're in the future or they're in Philadelphia and they're awful, but
it's very much a sitcom of these of this small group of people.
It's this group. It's not about the universe. They might do stuff in that universe, but like. It's not presented in a way as to kind of draw in as like, I wonder what's going on over there. You know, what's the deal with that? You know, not so much anyway. I mean, I'm not saying it's completely incapable of that.
If everything is through the filter of like one of these 4 characters, then it's difficult to expand on it without having everything refer back.
Yeah, I mean, I think certain you know, like TV shows and movies, they're great, but then probably don't translate as well to an RPG where, you know, you got multiple people playing things, because they're sort of their best form is the scripted kind of comedy or whatever. But yeah, you know, just to wrap it, I like to say I still want to do Mass Effect at some point. We're going to do Alien. I'm kind of racking my brains. I mean, it would be fun to do like something set in the Marvel universe, maybe like everybody's playing SHIELD agents or something. But that would kind of work, rather than be like, I'm going to play as this superhero. Just be like, no, you're just a dude on the ground and all this stuff is going on.
Sorry, I'm just eyeing Netflix, getting inspiration as we're going. I'm looking at Glow and being like, Glow, you could probably make an RPG out of, because then you've got like your backstage antics, you're coming up with your characters, you got your personas that your character has to come up with, and then you roll like your combat would be the wrestling match.
I think there is a wrestling RPG out there.
There almost certainly is. I'm sure the WWE's jumped all over that, because if there's something they can do, they do.
If they can monetize it, they will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully that's all answered Stevie's question. So the next question is from... We're switching over to Twitter now. This one is from @PenanceRPG, and it's from New Dragon.
Yes.
You asked, how long does the music take you? Do you have specific inspirations for the music, or do you just know what you feel for each series? It really... this is good, because you can ask me follow-ups. It really varies. Like, if I've got a long like lead time in before, like I don't need the music for a little while, I'll spend longer on it. Especially usually when it comes to like, you know, each sort of series has got its own kind of little opening theme that I tend to sort of have a bit more warning on, so I can spend a bit longer on it. Let's think of an example. So like the that kind of little piano bit with the synths behind it for Things from the Flood. I think I probably spent 2.5-3 hours on that, like start to finish. The piano bit I actually I didn't lift it. I used it that my piano software has got a lot of kind of built-in sort of MIDI files of like, hey, here's a thing in this style if you want to use it for scoring and stuff. And I kind of went through and I found like a kind of little lead bit that I liked, and then I pulled that out and I tweaked it and got it to, I spent a bit of time getting it to how I wanted it. But, it's about kind of finding a vibe sort of thing. So like I say, I think that took a couple of hours to get that how I wanted, which is actually fairly quick for some things. Other parts, like we've got, it depends on the vibe. Like battle music takes forever because I've got to come up with, it tends to have to be a longer piece. It's like there's percussion, there's big violins and horns and everything, and every single instrument I have to go through and do individually. So that takes forever. That, I think, I'm just trying to think of a specific example. I mean, battle music sometimes takes 6-7 hours to do a piece. And then the other end of the spectrum is stuff like the kind of ominous droning kind of backgroundy type bits. I think I've knocked one of them out in 15 minutes before.
Wow.
Because it's like a 5-minute piece of music. So basically I found, it's probably a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but like I found like a kind of drony keyboard sound that I've liked and gone, okay, that'll do. I've worked out like a real simple kind of chord pattern, usually just like moving around 4 different notes and then repeating it sort of thing. And then I might add them in at a higher octave later on. And I just press record and play them super slowly for like 5 minutes. And it sounds weird because it's on a drony thing. So that's like 5 minutes. Then I'll go through it again and add some like weird background percussion. I might add another separate kind of synth drone over the top, slap some reverb on, and it's done. Yeah, that's the simple thing. But the long answer is, the very short answer is, it varies. I guess. In terms of inspirations, I mean, it's just kind of like finding the vibe kind of thing that I want. It's obviously with Star Wars, it was like, okay, let's find some music write some music that's sort of John Williams-y, which is very hard. With Things from the Flood, it was kind of like I wanted a slightly 90s vibe, but I also wanted the kind of like slightly techno-ish sort of, I guess kind of, I don't know, slightly ominous sounding. Again, it's often kind of like moods and things more than anything else. That's kind of how I go. So that varies sort of story to story kind of thing, and moment to moment, because I'll often have things where I'm like, okay, I need to have a specific music for this specific thing, and this is the vibe of the scene. And how complicated and good they are varies quite proportionately to how long I've got before the episode needs to be released. Basically.
Well, they tend to they don't sound rushed at any point.
Some of them really are rushed. Like I've written music.
That.
Yeah, I know that. But yeah, peeking behind the curtain. I've sometimes been writing music up until about 45 minutes before the episodes had to go live, and I've gotten it out on time. But music. Yeah, usually, if I've got my it's the last thing that I add to the edit. Like I'll edit in like passes, so I'll get all the game stuff, the talking, done in one editing pass. Then I'll go back through and do sound effects, and then I'll go back through and add music. I feel like recently, especially with these one shots, I haven't, with the exception of the Star Trek one, I haven't really written any new music. So it's just been a case of finding the themes that I've already done that fit. And I need to sit down and have a whole day where I just kind of write a whole bunch more kind of general sort of things. Like I need a bunch more ominous droney tracks that aren't exactly the same as the other ominous droney ones, because I've basically been using the same ones for like 2-3 years. And I need some sort of upbeat kind of like wandering around town doing things music and stuff like that, because again, I've pretty much just been using the same one for the last 3 years. I need to expand my library of music, basically. Do you feel like I answered your question at all?
Yes. Definitely.
Cool. Okay. Right, now we're going to jump into Tayshal's questions. As always, came through with a whole bunch of them. Okay. In terms of hypotheticals. If all members of Pretending with Dice, past or present, were forced to fight Battle Royale style, who would win? both real life and character version.
Oh wow.
This is quite tough.
I'm just gonna. We've mentioned it before, but I think the only athletic person that's played on any of these is Jason. I would pretty much rate him as like in a 1-to-1 fight against. Well, I guess it's a battle royale, so it depends on who's approaching who. If it's all of us and we've got him surrounded, then maybe we've got a chance.
Yeah, I feel like we could take him.
If that's how the fight starts. But if he catches us one by one, we're all fucked.
No chance.
There's no chance. Bear hug us all to death. That'd be that.
Yeah, I'm not really much of a fighter. I don't like getting punched, or I don't like punching either.
I suspect that I could probably do reasonably well.
Yeah, I feel like you'd be like scrappy. Yeah.
I'm a masochist. I don't really care if people punch me.
Oh well,
it's between you and Jason then, I think. On this,
Get smacked and then you moan. That's going to make somebody pause for thought, probably. Yeah, no, my money's still on Jason. I'm still giving it to him. He can have the crown. I mean, I'm a wily fighter and I've got some like smarts and cunning about me, but I mean, part of it depends on the circumstance. If it's actually battle royale, what weapons do we get each? Because that's the deciding factor as much as anything else. If one of us is getting the paper fan and the other one's got the RPG, then there's a bit of an imbalance going on there.
Oh, okay. So what about character version then? So there's a lot of characters.
There are.
Oh god, yeah.
Again, let's list them out then. So we got Bork, Bronson, Enade. We've got Anthony, Hazel, and Sora. We've got.
I don't think any of those three.
Yeah, the teenagers are buggered. If
the teenagers they are long dead.
I think we can take out the things from the flood characters.
But as we know from the end of the last D&D arc, Enade has no problem killing teenagers.
True. It's definitely a shoot first, ask questions later kind of a guy.
Yeah. Okay. So they're out. Then we've got the Call of Cthulhu characters. So we've got.
Barnard,
that was it. I was racking my brain for your character's name. Barnard, Madam Sway, and Alistair. That was it.
I mean, Barnard's got a good physicality about him, where he'd probably be quite an intimidating one to come up against. But I think, apart from just being physically capable, he's like war scarred and stuff.
Yeah. And
the others weren't really fighters, I don't think, necessarily. Sway might have a gun hidden in a garter belt or something, would be my thought. That'd be her kind of like trump card, probably.
Yeah. I feel like, okay, so here's what we need to do. To answer this for Tayshal properly, we need to make a series of brackets and we'll let the Twitter users vote on them.
Yeah.
I think that's the only safe way to do it, is to not decide this ourselves. We'll let it democracy style. So yeah, keep an eye on our Twitter. I'll put that up. I'll put that up when I remember to put it up. So Tayshal's next question. What has been the most pleasing, satisfying thing that's happened to you due to being on a podcast? So rather than in the podcast, like related to being in podcast.
That's a good question. I don't know that I've experienced a fringe benefit from it necessarily.
I've made new friends.
Yeah, it's nice to like connect to people online and what have you, and it's sort of like an easy inroad where I don't know. It's weird to be on the other side of the coin when normally on Twitter and what have you, I'm the one that's like, hey, comedian I've seen on television, let me ask you a question or say hello or something. And now, to some extent, it's by no means the same thing because we're not celebrities or anything like that, nor are we aspiring to be. But it's weird to have people where they've heard you talking at length for a long time and then they roll up like, hey, I'm going to ask a question that's real specific. It's like, I don't know you, but you know me. Like there's an interesting factor to that. And that might be the one thing that I've sort of gotten a real perspective on that I otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah. I think just meeting new people, really, more than anything else, because there's a whole bunch of people I never would have probably come across or talked to or anything if I hadn't been doing podcasts, you know. Obviously, even you and I know each other from outside of podcasts previously, but I feel like we became better friends through doing podcasts.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, we've been doing we do the film project thing as well alongside other bits and pieces. And I think all of that, like that was starting to, like, we got into that and doing the podcast kind of at the same time, and that was like, yeah, real cementing of like, oh, hang on, we can actually get along a lot better than we did previously, because we'd never really kind of recognized that we had these things in common.
Yeah, and obviously Dragon, I don't think we probably wouldn't have met if we hadn't done podcasts and stuff, so...
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... Well, the podcast took us to Dragon Meet, and then meeting lots of people and playing lots of fun games that wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah, I don't think I would have gone up to, I'd say Dragon Meet. I don't tend to sort of travel for conventions really, other than, if I hadn't been invited to go as part of the podcast, I don't think I would have made it up there and meet people and stuff. I say that's the pleasing thing for me. Just in general, is just meeting new people and making friends and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say meeting people, also to an extent, I've got, because listeners of Pretending with Dice might not know as much. I have been seriously ill and I've been unable to work for a few years. So I've suddenly got a whole bunch of things that I can actually do, which has helped like fill in an awful lot of that missing time.
Yeah.
And a lot more people to interact with as well, when like I largely can't go out of the house most of the time. So it's like the timing of it's been absolutely perfect for me.
Yeah. So like I say, all the social aspect, I think, for all of us, I think is, like you say, it's very important, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
Cool. So Tayshel's next question: when will Tempest Squadron 2 be out? As always, soon. Yeah, I mean, a lot of you might have seen at the start of the year we put out I did a cool glitzy promo video of like Pretending with Dice 2020. Here's all the cool things we're going to do, and then COVID-19 happened, and all of our plans got put on hold, and I sat at home watching movies for 3 months.
That's just what happens, though.
Yeah. I mean, and Tempest Squadron 2, unfortunately, was going to be one of the groups that we were going to be recording in person. So that got knocked down to some point in the future. Like I say, it definitely was going to be this year, and it's in the video. I made I made a cool background with a planet in it and everything, and like a logo flying towards the screen. I was real pleased with that, and now here we are in mid to late August, and no sign of it yet. So soon, yeah. It's on the docket. Let's just say I've got plans. I actually started recording a while back, like a kind of, I don't want to call it like a demo version, but like a kind of, I started recording my narration, my opening narration kind of prologue type thing before doing any game sections in an effort to like, I'll save myself some time later. And now I think I've changed my plans for the actual game bit, so that was all a waste of time. But yeah, it is coming. Just, trust me, we are going to do it. It's coming. It's coming. Much like the return of Bork, Prawns, and Enade was also promised, I think, in our opening video for the year.
It's coming.
It's coming.
We're talking about it. The plans are brewing. People are available again.
Stay tuned. As soon as we know, we'll tell you, because, I've got to announce something. I've got to fill those intro sections with something. Some kind of announcement. So yeah, you'll know as soon as we know, basically. All right. What's the best thing, speaking of lockdown, what's the best thing you've seen during lockdown? Film /TV /game / anything other medium-wise?
That's an interesting question. I have to rack my brain for a second.
Well, we've been having fun playing, we haven't done it for the last couple of weeks, but we've been having fun playing Jackbox on Sunday evenings.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a really good laugh. Well, especially when we got nice big sessions going with lots of people in it. Yeah, being able to sit all of us at home, like actually connecting socially, doing something together, even though we're not able to actually see each other, has been quite nice. I'm thinking about films and TV though, and all that kind of stuff. God, I've watched a hell of a lot of stuff, but it's hard to sort of bring to mind like what were the good ones.
Well, earlier on in, I guess it was like April, maybe May. The musician Devin Townsend did a series of like quarantine streamed concerts, which were really cool. I enjoyed them. I'm trying to think of like things I did or like saw that like weren't on before, basically, and it is tough because a lot of what I watched while furloughed was like I guess like comfort viewing. It's all stuff I've seen before. Like I watched through all the Marvel movies again and Star Wars and things. And
I've watched things that were kind of so bad that they almost became good, but that's mostly my taste. Like, I watched the very excellent Mr. Dundee, which is effectively a pseudo sequel to Crocodile Dundee.
Okay,
that was a weird watch. The whole concept is that Paul Hogan, the actor that played Mick Dundee, is now quite old and still living in LA, and all anybody knows him for is playing Crocodile Dundee. So he spends his entire life with people turning to him and going, "You call that a knife?" And it's quite a cheesy, very cheaply made film, but it's got just enough humour and heart in it that it was all. I watched it kind of like, it's actually all right. I quite like Paul Hogan still. Like, he's got a lot of charisma for someone that I haven't seen on screen for about 25 years. So.
Yeah.
But I can't recommend that. Like, as I say, it fell into that sort of like, it was almost so bad it became entertainingly amusing kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've been on a bit of a 90s disaster movie kick the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yep.
I've been through Dante's Peak. Well, I watched Deep Impact the other day. What was the other one I watched? Just to torture myself, I watched Geostorm.
Oh, I saw you talking about Geostorm.
Yeah.
That sounded diabolically bad.
It's pretty bad. I can't recommend it.
We're doing the opposite of recommending good things.
Earlier on in the summer, I rewatched 2012.
Oh, God. Speaking of bad films, you should have put Day After Tomorrow on after that just to really double down on just
Funnily enough,
disaster movies.
I looked for it. It wasn't in. I must have not bought the Blu-ray on that. I know I used to have it on DVD, but it's not on my shelves at the moment.
Oh, it's such a dumb film, Day After Tomorrow. The ice is creeping forwards and it's freezing everything apart from furry animals for some reason. Oh, that's so stupid.
Well, they're wolves. They're used to...
Yeah, they're super hot-blooded, those things.
Yeah.
I can actually point to one good film, and it does link to Cthulhu mythos and stuff. Colour Out of Space with Nicolas Cage.
I did hear that was meant to be interesting. I haven't seen it.
Really, really good. And this is within the frame of Nicolas Cage films as much as anything else. Like, he doesn't overpower it with being Nicolas Cage, so it's a film in and of itself, not just being one of his movies. But as far as taking the kind of the mysteries that the Cthulhu mythos deals with, and then visualizing it, and in particular the body horror of Colour Out of Space is. There's some visuals in that film that I was not ready for and was very much like, oh, wow, this is a horrible, horrible concept. And really interesting is the best way I can put it. Worth a look.
Oh, yeah. I knew they'd put it out. I mean, because the history of films based on Cthulhu stuff is not great. But I did see that come out and I'd heard some interesting things about it, so I might see. I'd take it. It's not on Netflix or anything yet, I would have thought.
It's not, but you can buy it. It's available streaming and what have you. Yeah, well worth a look. Especially where we've obviously done Cthulhu related things, and I've read a bunch of the books and what have you that it was all based on, including Colour Out of Space. Like, it's a modern adaptation of it as well. Like, it's dealing with it with sort of like, even if you know the story, there's enough twists and turns, and in particular the visual component where they've taken the words off of the page and then kind of applied imagination to it and gone further. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Alrighty. Anything to add on this question, Dragon?
I'm not visual.
Fair enough.
I don't particularly watch stuff. Like, I will watch stuff if someone else is watching it, but I tend to get distracted.
Fair play.
Like, even if it's on, it's like there's moving colours in front of me. It doesn't go in.
Okay, fair
I'm
enough.
a terrible person to watch things with.
Alrighty. Well, we'll move on then. Okay, so Taysha's next question: what's your favourite podcast other than those you appear on?
Ooh.
This is quite a tough one. At the moment, I'm actually not. I've said this before in other Q&As. I don't really listen to other tabletop podcasts.
There isn't a massive amount of time, and you need something that's not similar to what you work with. I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I don't listen to too many these days, because it used to be that when I was working nights, I had endless time to listen to podcasts, and I really did constantly, like every night I'd listen to 6 hours of podcasts, that kind of stuff. And get through a lot of it. Now I've got about 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, maybe, to get podcasts in. So I mostly just listen to the professional stuff. Like Comedy Bang Bang is probably the one for me. Like it's improv comedians from LA, like famous actors, people that you would recognize just riffing and doing silly characters and stuff. And I tend to use that as a sort of like, it's inspiration as much as anything else. It gives me a lot of ideas in terms of like, okay, so this is how the professionals are doing it. That podcast gives a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain insofar as method and what have you goes. And it's quite useful to sort of, and entertaining as much as anything else. I actually do find it funny, but it's useful to listen to it and get that sense of like, okay, here's what's possible. Here's, I don't know, it's very difficult to describe, but you can hear the tone of people talking sometimes, and you can hear them leading each other down the path. And we've done that to some extent. And again, studying that is useful, I find.
On the improv side of things and everything.
Yeah.
I found that my podcast listening has sort of changed a bit over the years. I got into it originally through listening to a lot of the Kevin Smith podcasts and adjacent podcasts. In fact, that's actually how we met Steve Boost. Was Steve Boost and I were both in the chat room for I think it was DJ. Do you remember? You used to listen to Hollywood Babylon and stuff.
Yep.
Do you remember DJ James, Jam Master James?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he used to run like a sort of stream. It was before Twitch, really. It was like a sort of Sunday night or whatever night of the week it was, like kind of DJ set stream thing and chat show. And like Steve and I were both randomly in the chat room on there, so that's kind of how. And there's a couple of other people, like Load Puller as well. It's another one who always shares our links and stuff. But I don't actually listen to a lot of that kind of the Kevin Smith type stuff anymore, really. I
dropped off big time. I listen to him when he's talking to Scott Mosier, and that's about it.
But yeah,
it's one of these things like we've listened to hundreds of hours of these people. Like, so it's one of the things I used to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot before he got all weird and right wing and indulging far too many idiots. But it's one of those things where eventually familiarity, it can either breed contempt or you just get bored. There comes a point where you're like, I know this person well enough. Like, I don't need to hear them espousing their ideas anymore. On to the next one.
Yeah, as I say, I just kind of dropped off. It wasn't like any particular thing. I wasn't like, oh, I don't want to listen to this anymore. I just kind of just sort of, you get a few weeks behind, and then that few weeks turns into like, oh, I've got a huge backlog, and when am I ever going to listen to this? And then you just stop. I listen to a lot of the ones by the kind of McElroy family group of podcasts still, like My Brother and Me. Listen to that quite a lot because I've stayed basically current with that. So that's not a big thing to listen for an hour a week sort of thing. Just trying to think. I say my current thinking, like now I'm back at work, I've got a bit more time for sort of doing it because I used to listen to podcasts while I was working, and then obviously I've been off for the last little while. But I'm still I'm still behind. I enjoy 500 Greatest Films. That I think, like even that I'm like behind on. It's behind on everything. That the Dollop I listen to a lot. Although that's one I need to be in the right mood for the Dollop because it's often like quite sort of anger inducing because it's always like history of like, okay, here's what the real history was, and like, be prepared to be annoyed at people from the past kind of thing. I'm looking at my Winamp at the moment, what I've got on there. It's definitely not current. I think the last episode was 2013, 2012, and because I ended it. I always go back and occasionally re-listen to the show called the Podcast Eating Contest. I don't even think it's online anymore. Anyway, you can get it. But I've got it saved on my hard drive, and it's really like there's some questionable jokes and stuff in there. But again, going from the sort of improv style thing, I don't know. It's just something about it. It was one of those ones that I listened to when it was first on, and I do end up going back, but it does hit a lot still for me. And I don't know, but maybe there's a little bit of a nostalgia thing because that was when I was first kind of properly getting into podcasting and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'd still have to pick a favourite. Ones that you don't appear on. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I can name good podcasts. There's a couple of fairly obscure ones. Like there's one called S-Town that is very interesting more than anything else. It's a 7-part series about a guy who lives in a rural southern state in America, who messages a NPR journalist saying that he thinks a murder has taken place in his town, and that the town is covering up. And the way the guy talks, he's a very unusual character. And the series explores the journalist who went to visit him and find out what he was talking about. And what starts off as a potential murder mystery evolves into something quite different. And I'll say this, it's not a happy story. It's not one that ends with a happy ending, but it is a fascinating kind of glimpse into a life. And it is a very, as I say, it's 7 parts if memory serves. It lasts about 6 hours total. So it's kind of like there's a very finite thing to that podcast. It's quite easy to sort of digest it. And yeah, interesting journalism.
Yeah. I'll check that one out, especially because it's not like it's, like you say, it's only 6 hours to listen to. I can knock that out in a couple of work shifts.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you listen to the first one and it's not got you on the hook, then it's quite easy to just go, forget about that, without having invested too much time to know whether or not you're interested.
Sure.
That definitely helps. All of my answers are completely different because they're all pretty much factual and science-based. At the moment, I've been listening to a lot of SciShow Tangents, which it's a group that have a whole bunch of YouTube channels now. But all the channels are like family friendly, and the podcast is more like them just chatting to each other,
right?
And trying to find the most like interesting or weird facts about whatever the subject is for that episode.
Okay.
So that's quite fun. There's a couple of like science-based BBC ones which are pretty good. They're mostly World Service ones rather than UK based. Like Crowd Science is one that I quite like. But yeah, I find that I think it's because like I can't answer with RPG ones because most of the ones that we really like we've worked with. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like I say, it kind of where it says that barring those you appear on. Yeah, I mean, there's this one, and I'm on Penance, and yeah,
yeah, exactly. One that I really like their style. They've done some of our Halloween specials, but I don't think any of us have been on their show. Is Lovely Craftians. So they're Call of Cthulhu, and they're very like methodical and investigative, which is like the absolute opposite of us.
Yeah.
I love thinking back on the fact that we literally ended up in the bushes. We were literally running through the bushes at one point. It's like, oh wow, story-wise, narrative-wise, we're just in the wilderness right now.
Yeah, I would like I say, I wouldn't really say that's maybe investigative and methodical.
Yeah, far from it.
You guys were hiding in the woods, as you say. The interesting contrast there. Okay, so let's move on then with Tayshal's next, which is the penultimate question. Well, from Tayshal, and then we have one final question from Nikolai that he got in just under the wire after I said the.
That's it. We're done.
Yeah. So Tayshal's penultimate one is: if you could be any person that you've played on Pretending with Dice for a day, who would it be? So, well, Dragon, your options are Hazel or a robot.
Literally the robot.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Robots seem pretty capable.
Yeah. And she's so sarcastic. I love it.
We'll make her a return appearance in the second series when I get around to doing that. Eden, you've got a few more options.
They're not good options, so I don't make characters that anybody would want to be. I don't want to be Barnard, that's for sure. A psychologically scarred war veteran. Do I want to be Prunce, a man who's not quite sure who he is?
Remember you played yourself for those 2 episodes?
Oh, true, yeah. That's a good get out of jail free. I can literally be myself.
But during an alien invasion, though, so...
Yeah, true. Yeah, and I don't know that I had necessarily the best ideas for dealing with that, so... I think Prance, if only for the power fantasy, if only for the fact that I could go up and shrink somebody like he did to Enethay. Like, I'd gladly take that ability to just be like, bam, half my size now.
Your other options are Anthony, from Things from the Flood, or Ensign Johnny Connor, was that it?
Connor, yeah,
from a Star Trek one shot.
Anthony was the wieneriest of wieners, so I don't want to go back in time 15. Well, in fact, it's more than 15 years now. God, 20 years. Yeah, because that's basically just me channeling a teenage version of myself. All the worst things that I ever did as a teenager compounded into one character's very short lifespan. So yeah, not going back to that one. And yeah, no, I'm sticking with Prance. Prance is purely for the power fantasy in terms of like the ability to do all kinds of fantastical things. I'd sit and learn how to say the word prestidigitation without hesitating.
There you go.
I know I did. You wouldn't believe the times I've sat down recently and been like, prestidigitation. Just getting it into my head.
It's one of those words.
I can't speak, God damn it.
This is out of the question, but I can't help but feel like the culmination of you putting in 2.5 at that point story arcs of Prance doing prestidigitation and sort of not really knowing what he's doing with it, and then having you run into a competent magic user who knows how to use the spell properly and just cleans you off with it, and everybody, including you, is like, "Wow, what's that spell called?" And they're like, "It's prestidigitation. You learn it like day one."
Yeah, you know that this is like breathing for you, or at least it's supposed to be.
That's the kind of fun call. Like, well, it's not even a callback. It was like a fun building on your character's incompetencies.
Yeah. Other wizards look at Prance and go, "What the fuck? What's going on with you?" And he don't know.
I do need to fully re-listen back through everything before we record another arc with those characters, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Just to make sure I get everything
down and properly cement a few of those things where it's like we both know we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So,
God, I mean, in terms of me for this question, I do all the NPCs. So, I mean, who was having the most fun?
Bork's cousin seemed to be having quite a casual lifestyle.
Yeah, but that's true. No, he was kind of. I don't know if I got it across because he was running a shop. He was doing well, but he was very much under the thumb of his wife, who liked to spend his money for him, basically, and he seemed to be very kind of under the thumb, is what I was going for. Mm-hmm. Plus, on top of that, I had to have my tongue between my teeth when I was talking as him, and
yeah, I'm being slightly mocking and suggesting.
I had to reset my jaw after doing that conversation. It was funny, but I can't talk like this for the whole episode. If it's really going to talk, it's not going to do well for my mouth.
That's the worst bit when you're doing voices, if you get stuck as it.
Well, yeah, no, I think I had to cut it out, but I finished talking as him, and then I had a lisp for 5 minutes, so I had to stop and go back. So yeah, probably not him. Who was having fun?
Oh, what was your Shadowrun character's name?
Oh God, Silas.
Silas, yeah. I don't know that you'd want to be Silas.
I don't know if I want to be Silas either. I guess Mark's character's wingman from the Star Wars one, he just seemed really kind of he knew who he was, and he was kind of cool. Just he
came off well in his scenes where they were kind of dismissing him or talking around him, and he was kind of, all right, you do your thing, guys, I'm going to do my thing. That was the feeling that came through. Yeah, maybe
him. Vard, that was it. Yeah. I can't remember how to do the voice either. It's just kind of like this. No, yeah, I don't know. I haven't got that many voices.
Yeah, I think we've realised this as we've played. It always comes back to this guy eventually. I'm the right keys. Somehow this voice is right easy to do.
It really is, though. I don't know. You just kind of put a little bit of gruff on it, talk like this. It's sort of... I don't know. It's just easy to do. Okay, let's move on. So this is Tayshel's final question, which is a little bit inside baseball on your recent trip into town.
Yes, now I know what's coming next.
Which member of Pretending with Dice would be most likely to have been writing 1984 on everything to freak Eden out? So I don't know if you want to give a bit of backstory on this, because it's a bit odd out of context.
There's no context for this within the podcast, and unless you're following me on Twitter, and you saw me tweeting these very specific photographs over the course of 2 different days, then this would mean nothing to you. So basically, I went into Bournemouth Town Centre recently and spotted a series of tags with the number 1984 written on it. And I kind of took it upon myself to read between the lines and go, okay, so this tagger is making a political statement, and the things that he's tagged are kind of his idea of what Big Brother is. And he'd been tagging things like recycling bins and public cash machines and phone boxes. So I was kind of making a mockery of him on Twitter and joking with this idea of like, oh yeah, right on, fight the power, right 1984 on things. Truly, the phone box is the sign that Big Brother is watching over us all. So that was the context for why this question's been asked. As far as which, sorry, what was this? Was it which character or
which cast member who's been doing it to freak you out?
Which cast member?
I've never been. My good boy at school persona won't let me leave graffiti.
I'm the most likely one to be doing that. To be perfectly honest with you. And Mark even made the joke saying that, come on now, we all know you're the Bournemouth tagger. And I was like, well, it would be kind of doubly amusing to me to be the one that's writing it, but no, deep down, I am not that person.
I don't know. I don't really know if any of us are really like big kind of like graffiti.
Yeah, I would have the idea and then not do it. I'd tell somebody about the idea and that would be enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can't actually see myself going out and actually spray painting things.
Yeah.
Also, if I get caught, I can't run away fast enough. Just hobble away with my walking stick.
Well, the flip side of that, though, is like, if they don't see you actually doing it, are you that likely of a suspect?
Oh, no.
Just pointing in a direction and go, they went that way.
It's like that thing, if you, like, when you start at school, if you always seem like you're well behaved, they never check what you're up to ever again. You can just get away with it.
I did have an additional tag to that question, which I did throw onto Twitter to say, what would your characters tag to be political? Or what would one of your characters tag to make a political statement, and what would it be? Because I feel like my character, there's a couple of them. Like Barnard would probably have like some weird anti-war statement, or he would draw the
remember the Somme or something.
What's the symbol? I might be asking a question neither of you can answer, but there's a symbol that was drawn during World War I and II by soldiers. That Kilroy was here.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, the Kilroy symbol. I think that Barnard would draw the Kilroy symbol on walls inexplicably and not tell anybody that it was him. He'd just be in the local area and one would crop up somewhere.
I think Anthony would draw that S. You know the S.
Yeah.
The infinite S, yeah. Yeah, 100%. He was that level of average, entirely average and typical in every single way. And he'd think that he'd done some great work of art there, that would get people thinking, probably.
Man, that S was everywhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
And Prance would just leave a scorch mark on a wall somewhere, probably.
Just pocket pork smear.
Either that or Prince's androgyny symbol.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Which would have no context within the D&D universe, but Prance knows what it means, whatever.
What would Hazel's scrawling be if Prance is leaving that and Anthony's leaving the S? And
I imagine it would probably be like CND symbol or something.
Okay.
Like, I can see her being very, like tolerant of members of the military, but very against them in principle.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely against like nuclear weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
So I can see her having like being really stroppy about it as well.
Yeah, like we met them when they were, how old was Hazel? 16?
16-ish, yeah.
So we met them when they were about 16, 17. So go fast forward a few years and they're going on protest marches and things. Yeah.
She's totally the sort of person that would end up like living in one of the protest camps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. She was not right on, but she's a girl that knows what she thinks and is willing to fight for that.
Yes, definitely. Walking around carrying a knife.
That's fine.
What would Silas tag?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
God, what was his deal? He was kind of nervous, like a hacker. I don't know. Like
He was a bit of a soft touch. I can't help but think that he would nervously scroll something that was a little bit stronger than something he actually thought.
Down with all this.
Yeah, something as simple as fight the power or something like that.
Hack the planet.
Yes, that sounds like Silas's level. Hack the planet, and then he would skulk off to sit in his room and stare at his monitor for the rest of his life.
Goes off and plays an MMO. Okay, so we have one final question then from Nikolai, who technically got it in 5 3/4 hours after the deadline, but before we recorded this, saying, what lurks on the horizon for PWD? Well, hopefully all of our postponed plans from this year. I mean, I'm very, very close, I think, to organising the recording session for the group that was originally, we did the session 0 for just before lockdown, and we were gearing up to record, and then lockdown happened. So that hopefully is going to be in the next couple of weeks. We just need to nail down a date for that. We've been talking, we mentioned it about getting Pronsborg and NFA out of that time bubble. Hopefully this year, because it's actually 2 years since we recorded with that group.
Time has flown.
Yeah. Tempest Squadron 2. We were talking about doing Alien RPG, to the point where I put it in the promo video. Originally what we were going to do, because I don't know if this is still going on, Squid from Saviour's RPG was going to run us through Alien on there, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were going to do kind of like a DM swap thing. Like, obviously he's DMing on there, and then he was going to be part of the cast when we did it on here.
Yeah.
But all the plans are up in the air at the moment, and there wasn't like a solid, like, we're definitely going to record it in this order sort of thing. So
yeah, things just went a bit haywire.
Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, we've got a few things. I still think it'd be fun to do that Mass Effect All Krogan episode, but it's, everybody's just, make sure you've got like a mug of like honey tea next to you or something, just surreptitiously like
Strepsils or something.
Yeah, just be chugging Strepsils during the recording. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I had like a whole year of plans, and they've all been kind of knocked down the road by 6 months, sort of thing. I do think I would like to go back and do more with we sort of met 2 members of the Star Trek, the Starship crew, for when we did that one shot. I would like to go back and do more with maybe a bigger group.
No, I'd be up for that. Absolutely. Because I think that was an interesting system as well, and I know more than enough about Star Trek to go anywhere with that kind of thing.
So maybe develop that into like more of an ongoing series sort of thing. Because I enjoyed doing the one shot. But yeah, no, I feel like I'm more at home with doing longer things anyway, so that would be fun to go back to and do more on that. But yeah, I think doing more world building stuff, building out our D&D setting a bit more is always on the cards, because we have a lot of fun doing that. I don't know, maybe set some other stories in that setting that are not based on our main kind of thing, because now that we've fleshed out a bit more of the other surrounding area and that, I don't know. Yeah. Who knows? Even if it just ends up being like weird one shots and stuff. And hey, maybe you said it before again about doing your one shot setting that again that we talked about previously, Eden. But
yes, yeah, no, I was about to say, if I can ever manage to get my head in gear to actually get this down properly and organise it, then yes, eventually there will be a one shot coming, and because it's me in charge of it, it will be weird in some way, shape, or form, and it will be very much away from the other characters and what have you. So yeah, that will be giving me impetus to sort of put my brain back on that subject again. I've got a lot on my mind at the moment, but yeah. We'll put that sort of back on the table, and maybe once I've cleared a couple more bits and pieces off of my current plate, as it were, I'll load it up with some of that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well that's all the questions. Anybody have anything they want to plug / add /
I don't think I've got anything to plug particularly at the moment. I can point people towards my Twitter at Monkey Magic Eden. If I've got anything to share, it will be there. Usually it's complaining about the nature of politics and the current state of the world. Occasionally it's pictures of people tagging 1984.
Yeah, I was going to say, if people, you could be plugging people going to Westover, is it Westover Road? No, it's on Commercial Road in Bournemouth and looking for these tags before the council takes them down.
Oh yes, it's such a trip, such a worth a visit.
Come on down.
I am writing a few game reviews at the moment for because Jason, who we've already alluded to, is running a indie games website, and you may see me linking reviews to video games and stuff that I've written. So if you're at all into video games and what have you, then have a look at me and Jason in particular, and you will see us talking about that kind of stuff on Twitter from time to time.
Dragon?
Yes, I am part of Penance RPG. We are getting our Halloween project for this year up and running. I need to start organising more groups for that. And generally, our dystopia series will be continuing for the foreseeable future. And will hopefully it will we'll have a hiatus over October while we release Halloween, and then we'll go back to the weird apocalyptic future of 2115.
Awesome. Where can people find you online?
Most social media, we are at Penance RPG. You can find us on penancerpg.com, and you can listen to us. We're on all of the podcast apps that I know of, so if we're missing from one, let me know, and I'll get that sorted for you.
Awesome. What have I been doing? I'm recording my new album finally. It's only taken me 10 years, and if we're lucky, I might have it finished before the end of the year. I haven't written any lyrics yet, and I keep getting mental blocks when I go to do that. So yeah, but I will tweet occasionally about that on my own Twitter. But this is a weird way to start the plug thing. I will have the links for my album to plug when it's out. But yes, you can find my other music at adamjohnstonuk.bandcamp.com. Other than that, though, it would be really great if everybody came and joined our Pretending with Dice Discord. You can find the link on our Twitter bio, and now in the contact page, which I finally remembered to put live after 3 years, on our Podbean site. Turns out I'm bad at running things, guys. That might be why we haven't had a single email in the whole 3 years. Look, we're getting there.
Get in touch. They knew they could always get you on Twitter.
We're getting there. But yeah, so that's not live. So yeah, come and join us on Discord and hang out. We, as we alluded to earlier, we occasionally run Jackbox games. We do other multiplayer games and stuff, and just hang out and join the conversation while we talk about mostly weird 90s disaster movies and share odd memes. But it's a fun time. But yeah, as usual, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Pretend with Dice. Email us pretendingwithdice@outlook.com. That's pretty much it, I think. Have I left anything out? Don't think so.
I think we've covered the bases.
Yeah, fun times. But yeah, this was fun. I think we originally meant to do this back in May when the actual 3rd anniversary was. But May was right in the middle of all of the lockdown craziness, and I just forgot to organise it. I just put my hands up to that.
It's whatever.
Yeah, everything was up in the air at that point. But yeah, I'm hoping we'll be back in 2 weeks with maybe another bonus episode. If everything goes incredibly well to plan, we may be back in 2 weeks with the start of our next D&D storyline. But that's an outside chance, I will say. But who knows? Watch this space. 2 weeks is my birthday as well. So yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Send me a congrats not dying so far tweet or something. Whatever. So yeah, we will see you all next time. See you all later.
Bye.
Bye.